Good evening. A very warm welcome to one and all present here. Continuing with the knowledge series, Department of Electrical Engineering, Sagar Institute of Science, Technology and Engineering, Ratibad campus is going to conduct today under the umbrella of Institutional Innovation Sale, that is IIC, a session on angel investment and VC funding opportunity for new entrepreneurs by expert of the session, Mr. Satwik Bardhan, Director and Founder of Brightside Partners, who will be joined by other founder of the company, Mr. Bhanu Pawar and Mr. Purab Parikh. Dear friends, today we have with us on online dash Dr. Manish Pillore sir. This is a principal, SISTec-E Ratibad Campus Bhopal. Mr. Satwik Bardhan, Director and Founder of Brightside Partner USA, Speaker of the session. Mr. Bhanu Pawar, Director and Founder of Brightside Partner USA. Mr. Purab Parikh, Director and Founder of Brightside Partner USA. Professor Ashish Singhal, Director IIC SISTec Ratibad Campus Bhopal, and Dr. Ayush Srivastava, Area Coordinator IIC SISTec-E Ratibad Campus. Dear friends, today we have with us Satwik B, the speaker of the day. He is founder, angel investor, and VC focused on accelerating startup growth and reducing time to market from Greater Chicago area. At Brightside, he has evaluated startups having potential to disrupt markets quickly through breakthrough technology or leadership with an unfair advantage or both, worked hard alongside with the founding team, developed their product roadmap, managed sprints, prioritized feature releases and removed blockers to help keep moving forward, evaluated their competitive positioning in the markets they actually operate in. The startups operate on a closed feedback loop where the learnings from successes and failures. I would now request, I would like to request Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. Manish Pillore Sir, to extend a welcome to our Honorable expert of the session, Bardhan Sir, and his colleagues, founder and members. Sir, over to you, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to Mr. Satwik Bardhan, Mr. Bhanu Pawar, and Mr. Purab to SISTec. It's a real honor to have all of you on board in this session of IIC, that is Institutional Innovation Council at SISTec Ratibad. Also, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ayush Srivastava, our coordinator of IIC, Professor Ashish Singhal, our HOD of Electrical Engineering Department, and Professor Pankaj Sharma, a senior faculty in the Electrical Engineering Department. Also, all the audiences, all the viewers, the students, the faculty members, the prospective innovators who are watching this program live, and the deferred live version also, I'd like to welcome all of you. When it comes to innovation, I think we are doing pretty good at SISTec. We have been able to motivate students. We have been able to take them to the level of innovation, innovative ideas, ideation level, the proof of concept level, and in some cases beyond that also. Just to inform our honorable guests, SISTec has been closely associated with incubation activities. So we have a close association with the AIC Atal Incubation Center at Mandideep, Bhopal, and also the government of Madhya Pradesh initiative of Smart City, that is their incubation center within their Smart City office. The center is known as BNest. Why we have been benefiting with these two associations is because of the simple reason that we want to give our students an exposure of what incubation is all about. How does it help in the nurturing of ideas that are coming to the students? Plus, additionally, we also want them to have their final year projects realized in some or the other way. We want them to think that whether this project of final year engineering can be converted into some commercial model, whether it can have some potential to get commercialized, to get mass production, and also to encourage them that they should think beyond a normal job and the higher studies. In the past years, we have seen results also. A couple of our students have done startups of their own. Some of them are being incubated in the incubation centers, and many others are having frequent visits, frequent interactions with the startups. Those are already getting incubated, and the incubators, as I mentioned, the Government of India, MHRD, and the Government of Madhya Pradesh incubation centers right here in Bhopal. I personally have the privilege to be on the board of both of these incubation centers, which gives me an opportunity to attend the pitching sessions, attend the evaluation sessions of the prospective startups, those who are likely to be incubated in these centers. With this brief note about what are the activities at SISTec, what we have already been doing, I once again extend a warm welcome to all three honorable guests at this session and would request Professor Pankaj Sharma to kindly take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to invite and request President IIC SISTec-E Ratibad Campus, Professor Ashish Singhal, sir, to highlight the importance of IIC in the development of Bhopal.
Thank you, Mr. Pankaj, our respected principal and our eminent speaker, Mr. Satwik Bardhan, director and founder of Brightside Partner and other founders of the company, Mr. Bhanu Panwar and Mr. Pranav Parekh. I, Professor Singhal, President IIC. IIC means Institute Innovation Council from Sagar Institute of Science, Technology and Engineering, Bhopal. Welcome you all in the workshop, which is on the session on angel statement and VC funding opportunities from new entrepreneurs under the banner of the Institutional Innovation Cell at SISTec, Ratibad, Bhopal. Uh, I'd like to focus on some areas. What is basically IIC and how the IIC is executed. IIC basically known as for establishing and systematically foster the culture of the innovation among the student across the various departments. As far as the Ministry of Higher Education is concerned, the main area to establish of the IIC is basically to encourage and inspire and nurture our student by supporting them to work with new ideas and transform them into the new prototypes. As far as my principals are as mentioned, our final year students are basically indulge in the final year projects. They are coming to with the new ideas in the projects so that they can be benefited by this workshop, how to raise the funds for the particular projects and how we can set up our startups. So as far as the objective of this particular workshop is concerned, is basically how to prepare the business plan, how to launch the new enterprises, as well as how to encourage our skills like knowledge, even all the skills what we have. So, for not taking so much time, I would like to welcome once again all the dignitaries because this is a part of the dignitaries. I think this we are waiting so much, to hear of him. So that I would like to welcome once again from my side of all the dignitaries on the behalf of the SISTec, on the behalf of the IIC. Thank you so much. Over to the Pankaj sir.
Thank you so much, sir. As such, you have told right now, we all are eagerly waiting to hear more about this session. I am therefore handing over this online dash to Satwik Vardhan, sir. Over to you, Satwik Vardhan, sir.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, and um, Dr. Bilore, Professor Singhal, and last but certainly not the least, Ayush. He's been wonderful. What an amazing opportunity, right? To begin with, what an amazing opportunity. makes me want to go back 20 years. And back in our time, we never had these. So, arranged by our colleges. I mean, we all have started from good colleges, but did not have these kind of opportunities. So absolutely amazing that you can, arrange some of these seminars for the students to at least see that there is a different direction to take other than, so to say, mera beta doctor banega, mera beta engineer banega, right? To kind of show them that they can dream in a different direction. This is absolutely awesome. For the folks who are watching, don't think that your idea or journey ends with your final year project getting submitted and you getting a 90%, 99% score, because hey, projects can score high and can pull through your 8th semester score, something like that. There's a world much beyond that, right? Some of you have brilliant ideas which can transform into a startup. So as Professor Singhal just mentioned, that it's not just the idea that flourishes into a startup. There is an ecosystem that has to be built around the startup for it to be taken from the idea stage to forming a company. YouTube, Facebook, Google, they're all companies that have been formed in a garage. There are many aspects of building a startup, and again, through this initiative that your institute has taken, you will learn about many of these aspects. What we are here to talk about today is fundraising, a very important aspect of the startup journey, which is fundraising. We need money to kind of not only just start the idea, but also keep the idea going and to keep the company running. So we'll look at the aspects of fundraising, over the course of this presentation today. With that, Professor Sharma, if you can share the screen and we can get started. And while you're sharing the screen, once again, a very warm welcome to my colleagues at Brightside Partners, Bhanu and Purab. I'll just introduce them in a bit. But thank you. It's early for us and at Toronto and Chicago. So thank you for at least waking up and making it to the meeting. This is really going to be fun to change the students' lives in some way. Alrighty, so still waiting for the presentation. Here it goes. So yeah, as I said, today's topic is very concentrated about the fundraising piece of the startup puzzle. Next slide. So to introduce the room a little bit more, I have Bhanu with me. Bhanu, sorry. Can you, Professor Sharma, can you move to the next slide, please? There we go. Perfect. All right. So to introduce the room today, who do we have from Brightside? And again, I'll introduce Brightside Partners a little bit over here and a little bit at the end. The goal is really not about Brightside today. The goal is about you, your ideas, and how you can take it forward. But since the topic seems to be around the angels and the VCs, I can introduce Brightside as an early stage, and we'll all explain what early stage means. But early stage venture capital firm. We work with startups to kind of mature their journey. We work with startups to fund them to an extent, and we work with startups to see that they are kind of able to launch off the ground and start their journey of becoming a corporation for tomorrow. I have Bhanu with me. He has extensive corporate experience. He has extensive experience in finance. He's in finance enthusiast. He talks money. He's a founder. He's the founding member of Brightside Partners. So he came up with this idea a few years back, and off we started with Brightside. Purab, he's a corporate strategy guy. He is kind of worked in one of the big fours in the strategy space. His recent role has been in strategy as well. So he's always talking to startups about, what's their competitive positioning, what's their strategy, what are they doing right versus what are they doing wrong. And both Bhanu and Purav have exceptional experience in the retail industry space, right? Things like groceries, things like merchandising. Those are at their fingertips. So that's their domain experience. For me, I have about 20 plus years of technology consulting experience behind me. I've worked in companies like Wipro and Accenture. And again, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I took my entrepreneurial leap, came up with my own product. And then eventually, Bhanu and I got together. So Bhanu said, okay, great idea about forming Brightside. So why don't we guys do something together? So that's how we formed Brightside Partners. So again, as I said, the flow of the conversation would be, I'll kickstart the presentation. I'll hand it over to Purab at a certain section, and then Bhanu will take over and cover a bit of it. And then again, I'll go and close the presentation. And then we three can come into form the panel to answer any Q&A that you may have. Let's look at what we are going to cover today. So yeah, why should you talk about fundraising? In the startup journey, again, as I said, many pieces of the puzzle, but fundraising is one of them. Let's look at some of the key data points where we can appreciate why we should talk about this topic. And then comes the key question. Okay, I understand what fundraising is, but when should I do it? Right? When should you raise your funds? Purab is going to walk through that. Once that is done, what are the different avenues? It's important to understand what are the different avenues by which I can go and raise funds, right? If you're buying a home and you need a kind of home loan, you would shop around for different banks and see that, okay, this bank has this terms and conditions, this interest rate, that bank has that terms and condition, that interest rate. So similarly for a startup, you have different avenues to kind of raise those funds. We'll look at them and a little bit of pros and cons of each of them. Bhanu will cover that section. One of the avenues is obviously VCs and angel investor, which is a core interest of today. So Bhanu is going to cover a little more about who these people are, right? Who these people or institutions are. What do they do? How do they look like? How do they differ? What are the differences between angels and VCs? And then I'll take over and I'll kind of walk through what do these VCs and angels look for in a startup. So right now, if you look at your world, is very centered around your course, your engineering, your project. But then there is another world where angels and VCs operate. In order to connect the two worlds, you need to appreciate what they are looking at so that you can kind of sort of answer to not their asks, but how they are looking at your idea, how they are looking at your project. And it'll be if you appreciate what VCs and angels look for in a startup, it'll help you shape that message as you move forward, as you mature your startup idea. Once you've understood these questions, you'll be able to appreciate how we operate. And that's why I've thrown in the slide deck, one slider, a very small slide about Brightside at the end. So we'll cover very little about Brightside, how their positions, given that now you have a little bit of background about all these questions. Professor Sharma, next slide. So out of these questions that we'll be answering today, there are some of the questions that really can go deep, right? So we'll know about how to raise funds, but we will certainly not look at, in today's conversations, we are not going to look at how you're going to prepare your idea and your startup for fundraising, right? Again, as I said, think about what I said a little earlier. Your VCs and angels and the fundraising world is here. Your idea is here. There needs to be work done to join them. Today, you will appreciate what they're looking at, but we will not cover that what's in the tunnel. That's a deeper conversation. We would love to come in and talk about it, but not for today. Fundraising mechanics. Again, talking about the home loan analogy, maybe you are shopping for different banks and you have identified, okay, I'll go with State Bank of India, for example. But now comes the documentation. Now comes the hard work of back and forth, giving your home documents, getting them verified, whatever, right? Those are the mechanics. Similarly, for fundraising, once you have identified an approach or an option, there are lots of processes to kind of go follow through and get the funds into your bank. We'll not cover that mechanics. As I said, those processes include legal and documentation and understanding the benefits, the pros and cons of that particular method. It's legal processes and documentation, and those details is again up for a deeper conversation for another day. So having said that, let's look at our first question that we have in our agenda, that why should we why should we even talk about this fundraising topic? Let's understand, let's appreciate the benefit of doing a fundraising. So if you look at the next slide, statistics, data says 90% of the startups fail. And Professor Sharma, again, if we can move to the next slide, please. That's slide number 6. By the way, am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir, you're audible. Audible.
Good. Okay, very good. I can now see slide number 6. Great. So if you look at this slide, look at the data point. Now, we know, and this is from data, right? And this is not from data from a year. This is data from quite a few years, right? In general, the industry standard shouldn't be, but it is, that 90% of startups fail within year 1 and 5. If you look at the infographic to the right, there's a company called CB Insights who have done the research on, let's see what, okay, that's a very high failure rate. They fail very high at a high rate very quickly. Let's see why they fail. So these are what you see are the reasons for failure. And if you see on the right, run out of funds happens to be absolutely in the top of the graph with the highest percentage. So the data metric is 82% of them really fail due to the funding and the cash flow issues. By the way, this is 82% of the 90% of the startups that fail, and that percentage is different. You see that percent different because they are only a club of, I think, I can't read them, but probably around 1,000 startups that the CB Insights did. So 29% or whatever that number is of the focus group that CB Insights used, they reported that they failed due to running out of funds. So pretty high percentage, so to say. So this infographic really says that cash flow is one of the big problems to even talk about as a reason for startup failure. Next slide. So let's look at the cash flow a little deeper. So again, you have an idea what you are going to transform this into a business. If you're running a business, there is, and one of my past colleagues told me, we all know this mathematics from 5th standard probably, but it's a good reminder that at this experience and age, he went up to the whiteboard and told me, Satwik, they're running as a business. The only formula that you need to remember ever is sales minus cost equal to profit, period. So if you look at the cash flow, if you're analyzing a company, that's a very good formula to start. Sales, problem with inflow. So cash coming in and cost. Cash going out, what is coming in versus what is going out is what you get to keep. So Either the cash flow problem is a problem with the inflow, money coming in. How does money come in? You sell stuff, you sell your product, or you sell your services, right? Let's say you have sold something, and the customer, you have an agreement with the customer that no, we will pay you later after 30 days. So there's unrealized revenue, which is also money due to come in to your house, right? Or you have gone through these, you have kind of pulled out a lack of rupees from your bank account to fund this startup, and you have run out of funds. You don't have any money anymore. So once again, that's the problem with the inflow. What about the problem with the outflow? The problem with the outflow really, indicates a more operational challenge with your startup. Maybe you have kind of squandered money here and there, uncontrollably. Maybe stuff that you're working on are so expensive that, once again, they are expensive, and you had to buy them, high cost of stuff. Maybe you have sold stuff, you forgot to realize the revenue, and maybe what your systems are showing as revenue is not what is there in your bank. So maybe there is a revenue leakage somewhere that is happening. So there may be multiple problems with the outflow. So once again, sales minus cost equal to profit equation. So there can be a cash flow problem on the sales side. There can be a cash flow which is inflow. There is a cash flow problem on the cost side, which is the outflow, and therefore it impacts your profit. And in case of a startup, it impacts your sustainability, ability to even continue, right? Many of the startups closed door just because they ran out of funds. Let's look at the problem with let's look at what fundraising does here. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Fundraising, you're raising the fund, you're bringing fund into your house. So it only solves one part of your whole cash flow problem that your startup can get into, which is inflow, right? So it will solve one core area of your startup. If your startup runs into trouble, right, then money will be one of the problems, and fundraising will solve one of your money problems. So that's fundraising. In addition, fundraising is not a solution, it's not a one and done solution to your startup problems. Okay, startup is an issue, my startup's not working, let me go out and get some money and then I'll solve my problems. No, it just solves one core area of your startup's problem. So you need to look at the other areas as well, right? In the last conversation, I watched a little bit of the last presentation that your institute arranged, and they were talking about prototyping. How do you take the prototype to the market? That's an area where you can go wrong as well. So many areas. Fundraising solves only one of them. But in addition to solving that core problem, it has many other benefits that you can't see and feel, but you can realize the value. Once you go out and get funds, it gives you credibility, right? It puts your startup, it puts your idea in front of many people with bags of money. So it gives you credibility that many people with bags of money think that your idea is worth funding. It gives you coverage. Many of the big VCs will have media coverage. So if that VC invests in you, you will get a news flash in whatever websites they're affiliated to. So-and-so VC invested in so-and-so startup, right? A news write-up. So it gives you coverage. It gives you time to market. Very, very important, right? What I can do with, what I can grind through with 1,000 rupees in my bank, I can do much faster if I have 5 lakh rupees in my bank, because I can mobilize resources, I can buy stuff, I can hire people to do it much faster and beat my competition. Advisory, those VCs are industry tested individuals. They come from the industry. They come from the finance background, like Bhanu, for example, finance. Anything goes wrong with your finance, call Bhanu. He's going to, open up the hood and see what's going on. So they give you advisory. They give you what's wrong with your product, what's wrong with your idea, what's wrong with your business plan or financial plan or strategy. For example, Purab. Once again, Bhanu and Purab, coming up with a retail product, sure, they can tell you, how a retail product goes from your brain right to the shelf of, let's say, Big Bazaar. They know the entire journey. That retail expertise is what comes with VC. Operations. Many founders are, caught up with working on their product, right? They're working 10, 20 hours on the product. They're brimming with ideas. They don't have time to run the operations. So they get those, you get those additional arms and legs to move your operations forward as a founder is working hard on the other core areas. Most importantly, very, very importantly, network, right? Startup is a networking game. So getting connected to VCs and angels is really all about spreading the spider web. He knows him, they know her, she knows them, and then that network can spread the word, and it can only bring more resources, money, expertise, whatever, right? Strategic partnerships, and help your startup grow. Next slide. So now that we really appreciate, so now you can appreciate why it's important to raise funds. And the answer is not just to get money in the bank. The answer is to get money in the bank, to stem all these potential problems, and to get those advantages that we spoke about. In your startup's journey, when should you start considering a fundraising? It's a very important juncture. If you do a misstep, it can make you pay a little bit, right? No, it can lengthen your, it can cause some disruption. So it's important to explore when you should consider raising the funds. Let's hear about them for that piece from Purab.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Satwik. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. So Satwik very well explained on why it is important to raise funds. I'm going to talk about when should you consider raising the funds, and we'll go through two different aspects here. First is from a maturity perspective, right? I mean, not every idea is ready to go and get money from investors the moment that idea is born in your mind. Sometimes a lot of work needs to be done before you can actually stand in front of an investor and ask for funds. So we'll talk a little bit about what are those three key areas which are important for all of us to consider, all the startup founders to consider before they actually go out on the investor fundraising route. So if we can go to the next slide, you'll see there are three things, right? And again, these things will be very intuitive, and you might all think that, oh, I have it, but it's always very important to reiterate, to reinforce how important these things are before you actually go out to meet your investors. First, how well do you know your problem? First of all, have you clearly identified a problem that exists today? A lot of times people have very vague notions of a problem that they're solving, and any investment here in terms of time, the more time you invest early on, the smoother your journey is. So think very clearly about the problem that you're solving. But that's not enough. You also need to understand, how are people solving it today? Is the solution not efficient? Is it very expensive? Or is the solution does the solution not address the problem at all? It's solving something else and people are using it for it differently. So again, think about all the ways that problems are being solved today, and how is your idea solving it differently? And think of it from a customer lens. Who is facing this problem? Is this problem big in a way that a lot of people or a lot of companies are facing this problem? And if the answer is yes, then I think it's a very good proposition for you, because you've identified the right problem that needs to be solved. Jump on to the solution next. What's your approach to the solution? How are you going to solve it? Once you know that this is the problem, there are different ways of solving it, and why is your solution the best way to do it? Like, are you doing it better than others? Is it cheaper to do than relative to the other competitors, or are you doing it faster? And third thing is, we don't want to create solutions that are very complex and they cannot be scaled. You don't want to go and create refineries because they take 3 or 5 years to come, and those become very difficult to scale. A VC or an angel investor would not like that type of deals. What they like is basically an idea or a solution that can be quickly deployed across a number of different geographies, across a number of different customers, so that basically everybody makes money. Finally, last but not the least, is the team. Solo entrepreneurs, or here in North America we call them solopreneurs, is a model that is good to begin with, but again, it's never looked as favorably in the eyes of VC, because a VC or an angel investor always thinks that one person can only do so much. So a person always needs to come with a team, have a co-founder, have one or two co-founders, have an employee, one early stage employee, and that basically strengthens your capabilities that your startup has, and that actually puts comfort in the minds of a VC versus somebody coming in solo. Now, that's not to say that sometimes solo companies are successful, but a lot of times VCs do look for a team to support founders. With this context, next we'll talk about what are the different times when you should raise funds, right? So nice transition into this, that what's the right time to raise funds for my startup. So something for all of us to understand is that when we are starting out, it's typically done from personal funds. Ask your mom and dad, ask your uncle and aunt, ask your friends if they have money, if they're rich, like my friends were. Ask anybody who has money, but people who have personal connection with you, to give them a little bit of funding if you want to try something out. Then typically what we call the raise. These are called raises. You've probably heard these names, right? That company X does a series A or series B. These are called raises. And these raises are always done to when you want to grow the company. There is a concept for cash runway. Now, if you think of, I think in Satwik's analogy, right? If you're getting a home loan, basically you go to a bank, ask them for money. They give you the money if you're qualified, and then you buy a home, and that's it. In startup journey, it's different. You are going to build on top of that house a number of times before that house becomes very big and it becomes an interesting company to be successful in the future. So by that, what I mean is that you'll be going and hitting the doors of banks a number of times. That's in the analogy of home loan. And that's why we have these various stages wherein you would be talking to potential investors and VCs from time to time. And typically it takes 4 to 6 months to complete this, but it always varies depending on the size of the company. The graphic on the right side of this slide is basically very intuitive, and at a high level, like, there are broadly five different types of stages where companies and startups have to go and do some fundraising. Seed is where you start early on. There is no expectation of any sales or revenue. People are not expecting that you are bringing any money into the company. And people, obviously, because you're not bringing any money, there would be no profits as well. But the size of the money that you can raise is quite low in terms of seed stage. Our experience says that it could be anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million during the seed stage. This is basically investors putting a bet on you as the founder. If we remember the last slide, the problem, solution, and team. This is an investor betting money on you to solve that problem in the right way with the right team. Now, if everything works out, then you will go do whatever you want to do with your seed funds that will get tested. And once everything is lined up, then you can go and ask them for more funding, them or any other investor, and which is called Series A. In that one, you typically want to see revenue start flowing in, but it's a yellow exclamation mark here, because sometimes companies have revenue and they are able to go and do Series A, but a lot of times companies don't have a revenue, but they're still able to go and do a Series A funding. by just proving that they have ability to make revenue. Series B and C is when your idea gets more and more mature. And as you can see, the revenue becomes table stakes from that point onwards. You need to be making money because that shows that the product or solution that you are selling, there's actually demand for that. And you may or may not be generating profits at that time. And then finally, which is the last, which is sort of a tree, but it's not a tree really, which is called the initial public offering route. When your idea becomes big, it's scalable, it's proven, you have a number of customers who are basically opting in to buy your product from time to time, there is a provable revenue and profit model. That's when companies consider hitting the route of IPO or initial public offering, which means that basically you get listed as a stock exchange on the stock exchange of any country that you're operating in. So in India, you would get listed on Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange. And that's when you actually get, as a founder, as the founding team, you get a lot of money from public investors, from institutional investors, like, the big banks and big insurance companies. There are government pension plans. All of these companies invest huge amount of money into these companies when they are going on an IPO route. But if you can imagine, a lot of things have to happen before you actually go an IPO. So just I want to leave this slide with one last question: that what's the right time to raise money for my startups? Basically, as a founder, you need to look next towards next 4 to 6 months and ask yourself that however much money that I have today, is it going to be sufficient for me to run for the next 4 to 6 months? And if your answer is no, then you should be considering fundraising route very seriously. Now that we've talked about when you should be raising funds, it's obviously very important to understand how you should be doing it. And with that, I will pass the control to Bhanu, who will talk to us about that.
Yeah, thank you, Purab, and thanks a lot, everyone from the organizing committee for this wonderful initiative for the students. And as Purab mentioned, that now since you understand that there are inflows and outflows, there are nuances in terms of timing when you should raise, you also need to know and understand how you're going to do it, like what different types of instruments are there, or what different types of fundraising can happen, and who does it, like who's the audience who does this fundraising for you. So we'll delve into that. And to begin with, I think we'll start with what are the types of fundraising in the next slide. So broad strokes, there are consider three major categories of funds if anyone else is providing you. It can be debt, and you must be aware of that concept, right? Like when people have, or your parents or your friends have bought houses, they go to a bank has a lien on your property, and they give you money up front, and then you repay that through interest and principal payments. In this category of financing, investors don't have a stake in your company. Analogy, bank does not have a stake in your house. They don't come and live in your house, but you owe them payments. And that is one of the disadvantages of this sort of financing, because you need to pay fixed monthly payments. The second form is equity. In equity, you don't owe money on a monthly basis or any interest back to the financing provider, but they are going to come and take a portion of your company or startup, and then they will own that for a long portion of time until they decide, or you decide to sell it off. The third one is hybrid, and as the name suggests, it's a mix of the two. So it's in some form it's debt, in some form it's equity, and it has pros and cons of both of them. So consider it a financing which starts as a debt, but later on can convert into an equity. So just giving a little bit more flexibility to the startup founders and entrepreneurs to juggle around and have their company financed. Now, since we have talked about these three broad categories, let's look at who provides these kind of financing. And as you can see on this page, there are a bunch of people, there are a bunch of mechanisms how a startup can be funded. So the first one is bootstrapping, and as the name suggests, I think you're strapping your boots, and I think you're just using your own resources to develop the prototype, to have the MVP ready, and you're leveraging your personal funds to build that. If idea matures a little bit more, you may, and you're heavily invested, maybe you don't have personal funds, you may ask your friends and family to support your journey and your belief that you have in your idea. And friends and family, if they have seen this presentation, will obviously ask whether it is debt or equity, but otherwise, most of the time, it is just donations in good faith that your friends and family do to fulfill your dream. Third one, as we talked about, most of you will know about this. Business loans, banks and lending institutions provide this, but the only caveat or nuance here is that this only happens at a later stage. So if your startup or your idea entails some assets, then you can use this form. Otherwise, if there are no assets, usually banks and lending institutions do not provide any sort of financing. Crowdfunding. This is a relatively recent development. So if your product or if your startup is customer facing and it has huge customer base, you can, instead of monetizing or charging customer directly, you can ask them to be your equity investors and they can fund your journey as a startup. There are a lot of crowdfunding platforms available. So if you are in that domain, it's definitely worth trying. There are nuances to it, but you can crowdfund or customer fund your startup. Venture capital, I think these are usually funds and angel investors, very similar to us, and they fund startups at early stages. As Pura mentioned in the last slide, that there are various stages of financing. They capture the value chain, which is originating from the seed up to a decently higher round. And then private equity firms. These are actually, just consider them similar to venture capitalists, but playing a bigger game. Like they will get involved very close to the IPO game. When you are about to go public, you have gone through 4 or 5 stages of financing, and now your idea is very solid. It requires huge amount of money now. That's where private equity firms get involved. And last is public equity, which is you getting listed, your company getting listed on a stock exchange, and you raising directly through the markets. So now, since we have talked about this, we'll double click into venture capital and angel investors a little bit, because that is one of the primary forms of financing that is provided. So if we think about like who are these VCs and angel investors, like how do they get their funds? Where do they deploy their funds? What is the mechanism? What is their thought process? So we'll look into that in the next slide. So as you can see, angel investors are typically, both of them, angel investors and VCs or venture capitalists, both of them invest in startups. Angel investors are usually individual investors, and they are using their own funds through the windfalls or like whatever has happened. They have successfully raised some companies, or they are extremely rich, high net worth individuals, and they want to invest. They are investing in their individual capacity into startups. So they will listen to your idea. They also have usually a lot of startup experience. So because they have invested in a lot of companies, so they will give you some advice, they'll give you resources, they'll give you some connections. That's how they play. It is their own money, they're investing it. On the contrary, I think venture capitalists, they invest their money as well as in money from various other partners from which they raise their funds. So they actually accumulate a pool of funds from various sources, various partners, and then they invest in your startup. Similar to angels, they also bring a lot of expertise. As a matter of fact, more expertise, because they have a broader network, broader number of people supporting them, and they provide you advisory, they provide you funds, and they also actually sit on your boards and help you guide and navigate through various stages. So these are the two broad classifications in terms of early stage venture financing, I'll say, angel investors and VC. And now what they look for in a startup before they fund it, I'll just pass it on to Satwik back, and he will definitely talk to you about that.
Hey, thanks, Manu. So if we can go to the next slide, once again, when we are asking this particular question, what do VCs and angel look for in a startup? We are really doing a matchmaking. Remember, how I started, right? Here's your idea, here's your dream, and here are the VCs and angels with the bag. How do we make the match, right? First and foremost, it's about you, right? VCs and you say, I have a good idea and startup. The VC says, I'm looking for a great business. So there's already a disconnect, right? And if we want to kind of connect the dots, then what forms a business? A great idea, a great execution, and great great operation, right? So first of all, and who's running it? So first of all, the U is about who's running it, who's running the show. And there are certain characteristics that they look for, which is kind of, which you see in the bottom. Most of them pertain to your core character, right? Are you passionate enough? Are you resilient enough, right? You will hear VC and angels are an industry where the word no comes first. So you need to be able to handle rejection, right? So that's resilience. You still need to be smiling, still need to be smiling and move to the next page, go and continue to fundraise. So out of all these, apart from all the characters, apart from knowledge, everything speaks about your personality. Knowledge is probably the easiest of all of them. You gain knowledge, but if you don't have the rest, VCs are going to kind of raise an eyebrow. And then they look for your story. What are you showing them? Remember, you started with, I have an idea. Okay, what's the strength of your idea? Is it impacting lives of 1,000 people? Is it impacting lives of 1 million people? Or is it changing the world? Or is it changing something beyond the world, which we know Elon Musk is doing by sending a spaceship to Mars, right? But it should be believable. You have to make them believe them. It should resonate with them. If you take a retail idea to a healthcare VC whose focus is on healthcare, it may not be a good matchmaking, right? So you need to find those investors who can resonate to your idea, and you need to tell them the story that they remember, that's memorable. And finally, once again, and this goes back to how Professor Singhal beautifully identified what are the aspects of a startup that the Innovation Center is going to focus on presenting. It's not just the idea, it's about peripherals around the idea. Because in order to run the business, you need more than the idea, right? You need to answer questions about how do you market? How do you operate? How do you scale? How do you hire? How do you fire, right? What is your organization structure looks like? Who are the directors? So in order to kind of many questions which needs to be answered in order to convince the VC that yes, if I'm betting my money on this you, then that you can take this story. He has the deep think to take this story from zero to hero. Once again, this is part of a deeper conversation, but I think you have a fair amount of idea on how kind of to join the tunnel, right? To kind of what's inside the tunnel in the matchmaking process. After having gone through all this session, right, now you will appreciate where we operate. If you go to the next slide, and that's why we just throw in a little bit about how we operate and which space you operate. If you remember Purab's slide about the small plants going to big, and on the left-hand side you have a very small, a green shoot. So that's what you would call an early stage startup. So we are and Bhanu explained to you what a venture capital does, right? So join the two. So we are that venture capital who actually funds those early stage startups. We look for those ideas. We look for those youths who are very promising, very passionate, and we fund them to kind of get their product off the ground. So if you've got a game-changing idea, then yeah, we are listening. We'll have those contacts, down below for you to reach out to. We are all ears. Hey, this is my idea. This is what it can do. This is how it can change the world. Sure, let's have a conversation, right? So we are that venture capital firm. We also incubate and accelerate startups. And again, those are two new terms that you are seeing here, but those terms are related to what Professor Singhal mentioned about forming the business, forming those other blocks around the idea. That spend time to think through those ideas, form those ideas, create the right documents, create the right legal structure for the venture firm to be kind of drooling on your idea and come running to you with bag of money. Just an idea will not cut it. So that's about Brightside. That's what we do primarily. So once again, if you got a game-changing idea, for sure, if whatever idea that you think can go from an idea to a scalable business that can impact lives, we are listening. If you go to the next slide, we are, for sure you can reach out to the Innovation Center for our contact details. And but if you want a pen and paper, you can make a quick note. You can visit our website. You can get in touch, send an invite through a LinkedIn, or you can shoot us an email, right, which we read. With that said, thank you very much. Thank you for being patient with our presentation, and we'll open it up to Q&A. Over to you, Ayush and others.
Thank you so much. That was a really wonderful effort.
Professor Sharma, I think we lost you for a bit.
Engineering, Ratipur campus, we really appreciate your effort while describing this angel investment. And
So anyway, I think you may not be able to listen to the words, but then the gesture is quite clear to you. A great sense of gratitude. Thanks to all three of you for spending time for SISTec students and the faculty members. Also to let us know what's this all about. So this is right from the horse's mouth. You have been practicing all these things. You have been funding these startups. You have been experiencing the pain these startup would have experienced. Plus, you would have supporting the young entrepreneurs, the innovators, and of course, the young students like those studying at SISTec. I also hope the students would have got a clear idea about the terminology angel investor. So it's a really interesting terminology. It also has the word angel, which is godly, and investment, which is totally finance related. So what Bhanu, if I'm not wrong, Bhanu is from finance, right?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so one the godly thing, and the other one purely finance. So Vishnu and Kuber, combination of both these two, angel and investment. Also, the venture capitalist. This also is a term which is generally less understood by the students, particularly those who are trying to do something innovative, and they're trying to convert their ideas into realistic products. Now, it was also clear from your deliberation today that it's not difficult to aspire for funding your idea, as long as the idea is workable, the idea is implementable, and it's a good thing to look forward to the investments if you are confident enough for your idea. A lot of things were clear, a lot of things were made clear in today's discussion. Once again, heartfelt thanks to Purab, Bhanu, and Satwik for spending time for us. That too, we realize it's early morning for you. You have just woken up only for us. So please continue with your day's routine. And once again, thanks very much. Also, thanks to Dr. Ayush for roping in these three experts for us in our Institutional Innovation Council event. Also, thanks to Professor Ashish Singhal. I could listen that a lot of times you were quoted. So you also have great ideas. So next session we are going to have right from you as expert speaker. So that's also is a good idea. I hope Satwik would agree to me.
Absolutely. And Ayush, I look forward to that link for
Yes,
sure.
yes, yes. Yeah, so thanks once again. Unless we have some questions from the audience. Pankaj sir, Ashish sir, do we have some questions from the audience?
So actually, we do have the questions. We do have the questions from the audience side. So actually, there is some trouble in the network of the issue. I really called to the Pankaj sir on my stage. So please take me the 1 and 2 minutes so that the audience can be asked the questions, sir.
Sounds good.
Okay, okay.
Perfect.
Ayush, do you have access to the questions?
No, sir. Actually, only Pankaj sir have the access.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pankaj, now you're audible, Pankaj. Please raise the question, Pankaj.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes,
Or
Hello.
yes,
Yes,
Professor
sir.
Sharma,
You
we can
can.
hear you.
yes, Pankaj.
Ayush sir, am I audible to you? Yes, sir. You are audible. Please continue.
Sir, before asking the Pankaj, I am having some questions in my mind which I want to ask you with all the greatest and expert panels in front of me. And as far as my student is concerned, because we all are the teachers and we are living with the students and with the new creative ideas, those who are, in the converting into the prototypes. So what we are basically facing the problem is to raise the funds, so that our idea is basically regarding how to generate, how to making the prototype. We will be able to making the prototype unless I really listen the speaker of Mr. Banu said that there's all about how to raise the funds. So the funding is a main problem for the student. So they are having ideas, they are having a creativity, they are having an emphasis to work. So I would request you, please tell me the simple 1 and 2 things so that a student should not focus rather on the raising the funds, just focus on the ideas, and everyone can welcome their ideas in the market, sir.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Professor Ashish. I think fundraising in itself takes a very big chunk of entrepreneurs or founders' mind, efforts, and energies, right? So the simplest way to think about it is like if you will, I think have the idea ready, have a solid idea, and build a solid business proposition around it to some extent, right? Like have, as Satwik mentioned in the pitch as well, that fundraising in requires an ecosystem to be built around the idea. So have the idea, then have how that idea will be monetized, how that idea will convert into a business, commercialize, and having all these, there are various forms right nowadays, right? Like I think for startup financing, there are various platforms available online where you can go and submit your documents. Everything nowadays is like there's so many events happening. You can get a list of VCs. If you just do a Google search, you can get a list of VCs and angel investors from various sources, and you start sharing those few pages that actually kind of encapsulate your business around your idea to increase the interest from the community.
Okay. Uh, Sir, what basically the student are facing the problems now. I have a one question from the student side that when the students are in the third year and having some idea to become an entrepreneur or to plan the business. So what should be the steps to go further to making our business to be in the successful business? I would say that. So how what should be the steps?
So, so I think again, I think the steps will be the same, right? I think so. Let's break it down a little bit and think about it this way. So when the students are in third or fourth year, they definitely have come up with a very good project and a good prototype and a good idea, right? Now there is a journey in front of them, which is from taking that idea and growing that steadily and slowly and making it something that actually increases interest and like from the customers and from investors and various other stakeholders in the ecosystem. So I'll say one slide that Purab shared was something that we should always remember, and I think he can build on to that later on as well. I think once you have identified the problem and the solution, building a team around it and making sure that your solution is solving the right problem, and it is solving for a sizable population is extremely critical. I think that's how your startup or your idea would gain traction itself, and it will start flying with the right support system and with the right investors, of course. Pura, would you like to build on that?
No, Banu, I think very well captured, right? I mean, at the end, it is problem, solution, team. Like those are the first three steps that need to be thought through a lot, that need to have data sometimes to prove that this is actually how we are thinking about it. So data becomes important when you start reaching out. And third is conviction. I mean, something that we don't talk about, but as a founder, if you are shaky, if they see that, oh, is this person confident in solving this problem or not, it becomes a tough sell to an investor outside. So conviction, you need obviously problem, solution, and team, but you need conviction that you are the right person to solve this problem.
Absolutely. However, most of the students are basically, sir, focus on, like to get them placed in the good and reputed company like the MNCs after the BTech. But some of the student in which the 10 or 12% students are basically having an idea to converting into the this and good in business plans. So as the Purav sir has said, they should have some convictions. The main important thing is that most of the students are not having the risk
Yes,
taking
copyright.
capabilities. So that is one of the issue in the final year students. They could not take the risk more.
Mm.
So as far as the risk factor is concerned, that is why they are very much afraid how to build a teams. If most of the investors like you, they can stand behind the students. Definitely, they can boost themselves. So
Definitely.
is as far as our students are well capable enough, they can do that, but they want some investors to be stand behind them so that they can feel like wow, I could do something for that.
Definitely. And Professor Singhal, like, what I've also seen, I mean, I used to be an engineering student. There were a lot of students along with me, my classmates, my colleagues. Uh, the the situation is real, right? I mean, when you are in third or fourth year, you are thinking that, okay, I'm going to go out in the industry. Should I take the startup route or should I take the MNC route, right? And MNC is always a safe bet, as you said. What I have seen get successful is that people sometimes do both. They take up a job, but at the same time, they do other passion projects on the side till it becomes big enough so that they can actually leave their job and then become a full-time entrepreneur. So that's one way of looking at it. Second, the investors will be there, right? I mean, there's a lot of money going in the market. We are one firm, but there is so many other firms. And provided that, again, I'll go back to the same thing: problem, solution, team, and conviction. If a student or if somebody demonstrates that, there will be investors to back, including us included. When we see potential, we don't mind putting our dollars there.
Then thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Over to the Pankaj sir.
Thank you, sir. There are a few more questions. If time is there, I would like to ask.
If Satwik sir is permitted.
Go
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
go ahead. Absolutely, we're waiting.
So,
For
we
sure,
would like to know.
happy to
We
answer
would
the
like to
questions.
know what is the legal preparation behind this fundraising. If there is any sort of initial legal preparation for this fundraising.
Bhanu, you would like to answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. They are like, let's take an analogy. Like, I think when you go to a bank for getting a house financed, like you have various papers like commercial due diligence of your house papers, your property papers, right transfer, certificates, municipality checks. Very similar to that, for a startup, you would need your articles of incorporation, that you are registered as a company, where you are registered. As we have names and entities, investors will not invest in you personally. They will invest in a company which has to be registered as a legal entity somewhere. So we'll register that company, that legal entity paperwork has to be there. Investors will look at that. They will make sure that the legal entity is clean, well formed. There are no legal liabilities on that. And similar to a bank, right? Like when they give you a loan. So that paperwork has to happen. Apart from that, they will also look at your business case, what you are actually proposing, what are the financials of that business case, what kind of returns are there for them to make, right? And then there's some small negotiation in terms of terms and conditions at which they're going to find you.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate your effort for this beautiful presentation about this angel investment and VC investment fundraising. I would now like to invite and request Dr. Ayush Srivastav, Area Coordinator, IISc SISTec-E Ratibad Campus, for vote of the thanks. Over to you, Dr. Ayush Srivastav, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank to principal sir for supporting us, and another. I want to thanks to the Swastik, Bhanu, and
Okay, looks like his connection broke, but I'm pretty sure his third name was Purav.
Absolutely. So, on the behalf of the Dr. Ayush, actually, we are having some heavy rains in the country, so that might be the some disturbance is going on. So, thank you so much to all dignitaries for attending such a beautiful seminars, beautiful workshops, and by with your kind words, with your visions, definitely we will definitely surviving our students in a good manner. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely, and if we have to close with just one sentence, I thank you, not for inviting us, not at all, but for making this opportunity for students to see that there is a different channel.
Done.
It's,
Sir,
it's,
as far as
it's not doctor, it's not engineer, it's not lawyer, but there is a different channel. There is worth taking the risk. We never had that opportunity, and if you did not bring this to the students of this generation wouldn't have that opportunity either. So you're bridging the gap. You're doing a fantastic job, and kudos and thanks to you for that one, for bringing
Sir,
up the new generation.
So definitely, sir, I would like to, thanks to our visionary principals, sir. Actually, they are basically focused about how to bridge the gap between the student and the students or the academy. I would say academy with the industries, and I hope this is not the last end. The journey is started from today itself, and I'll definitely keep in touch in the future. So definitely, our student can be well benefited by your vision, sir.
Please do,
So
please do. We'll be happy to keep the dialogue open. If there are follow-up, conversations or presentations that we have to make on any of the, topics in a deeper conversation, very, very happy to kind of be a part of the student's journey.
thank you so much, sir. Thank you, principal, sir. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Take
Thank you.
care
Thank you a lot.
and have a very, very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.